All right, you've probably heard it a million times by now. AI is changing everything. But what does that really mean for the folks who are actually, you know, building the software we use every day? There's this huge claim floating around about the 10x developer, this idea that a coder can suddenly become 10 times more productive thanks to AI. So, is this for real? Or is it just another tech buzzword? Let's dig in and find out.
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Is this a real deal revolution that's about to totally flip the script on how everything gets made, from your favorite app to your banking software? Or is it just, a small boost with some really slick marketing? Well, as it turns out, the truth is way more interesting than a simple yes or no. Okay, to get a feel for what's possible, just look at this. A new idea is popping up called vibe coding, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. Instead of a developer having to sit there and grind out every single line of code, they can just describe the vibe of the app they want, the feel, the function, and the results? Well, they're kind of nuts. A project that used to take, say, 3 to 5 days is now getting done in 45 minutes. That's not just fast, that's where this whole wild 10x idea gets its fuel.
So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by tackling that 10x promise. Then, we'll look at Greenfield projects. That's where AI looks like straight up magic. After that, we'll dive into the much messier world of Brownfield projects. We'll also unpack the agentic revolution behind it all, and we'll wrap up by asking what this all means for developers. Are they becoming architects or just prompt monkeys?
All right, section 1, the 10x coding promise. Hype or reality? It's a huge claim that grabs all the headlines, but is there any real hard data behind it? Let's see. Okay, so where's the most spectacular proof for this 10x claim? It's in what we call Greenfield projects. Seriously, just picture an artist with a totally blank canvas. No old stuff to deal with, no existing lines you have to follow. You're just building something brand new from scratch. And in that kind of wide open space, AI's performance is just, well, it's mind-blowing.
And when I say mind-blowing, I mean it. Check this out. In one case, a developer built a whole calorie tracker app, a seafood app, from nothing to a working product in about an hour. An hour. Normally, that's a multi-day job. So let's do the math. That's not 10x faster. That's a 40 times speed up. It's a completely unbelievable jump.
Unless you think that was just a one-off lucky shot, it's not. GitHub ran a proper controlled experiment, and what they find? Developers using their AI assistant finished their work over 55% faster. So yeah, the hard data is absolutely there to back up the hype. So what does this kind of speed actually do to a project? Well, it completely rewrites the timeline. We saw it with that seafood app. But get this, another startup built their entire first product in just 3 weeks, instead of the 6 months they had planned. Even that classic first step for any coder, getting a simple hello world to show up, that used to be a few frustrating hours of setup. Now, it's seconds. Literally seconds. Okay, but here's the catch, and it's a big one. This insane speed boost, it doesn't last. The data shows this thing called a complexity decay curve. Basically, when you're starting small and simple, the AI's advantage is massive, like over 20x. But as the project gets bigger, more complicated, that advantage starts to shrink. It drops down and eventually levels off at around 2x, which, hey, is still great, but it's not 40x. And let's be real, those Greenfield projects are the dream, but they're not the everyday reality. That brings us to Brownfield projects. This is where most developers live, working on huge existing code bases that are often, frankly, a total mess. And when you throw AI into this world, well, the story gets a lot more complicated. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still some major wins here. On one hand, for very specific, targeted jobs, AI is a huge help. Look at IBM. They cut the time it took to modernize their old Java code by 70%. 70! And Brex saw their devs merge 39% more features into their app. So for the right task, AI is still a beast. But on the other hand, you get this. A really rigorous study from Metra found something that just makes you scratch your head. They found that for experienced developers, we're talking the pros, when they were fixing complex bugs, using AI actually made them 19% slower. Slower! They were less productive. How on earth is that even possible? Well, a big part of the problem is this thing called code churn. Someone analyzed a whopping 153 million lines of code, and they found a wild trend. Ever since AI coding tools got big, the amount of code that gets written and then almost immediately deleted has doubled. And why is that? It's because the AI spits out code that looks perfect. It seems right, but it's got these subtle hidden flaws, forcing developers to burn time hunting down and fixing the AI's mistakes.
The deep technical reason for this comes down to something called the context window. And here's the best way to think about it. Imagine the AI is trying to edit page 700 of a 1,000-page novel. The problem is, it can only read page 700. It has no memory of what happened on page 1 or page 500. So the change it makes might look great on that one page, but it completely breaks the plot of the whole book. It just doesn't have the full context, and that's what creates these sneaky bugs.
So this all leads us to the big aha moment, the technology shift that explains both the crazy successes and the frustrating failures. We're in the middle of a move away from simple predictive AI to something way, way more powerful. We're talking about agentic AI. Yeah, this really nails the difference. The AI most of us know is basically a super fancy autocomplete, right? It just predicts the next few words. Here's the next line of code. But this new agentic AI, it's totally different. It's like an entire worker. It says, okay, I'm going to read the documentation, open the terminal, run the code, see the error, and then go edit 5 different files to fix it. It's not just predicting, it's orchestrating. And this is its secret sauce. It runs in a loop. First, it analyzes your request. Then it makes a plan. Then it actually uses tools like a file editor or the command line. And here's the key part. It verifies the result. And if it didn't work, it repeats the whole process. It tries again. That little loop of planning, doing, and checking is the engine behind those ridiculous speedups we saw earlier. So, okay, with a tool this powerful, what does this mean for the actual human developers? It turns out this is creating a brand new and super important divide in the programming world. The definition of a great developer is changing right under our feet. They're calling it the seniority inversion, and it's a wild concept. For a senior developer, someone with tons of experience, this AI is a legit superpower. They have the wisdom to see when the AI is making a mistake and can guide it like an architect directing a construction crew. But for a junior dev, there's a real risk they become a prompt monkey, just feeding prompts to the AI, getting code back, and not really understanding how or why it works. And that is a recipe for disaster. And that brings us to what might be the single biggest takeaway from all of this. The main bottleneck in software development has shifted. It's no longer about who can write code the fastest. The hardest, most valuable skill now is being able to verify it, to look at what the AI produced and say, yes, that's correct, that's secure, and that's efficient. So that's where we're at. The bottleneck isn't writing code anymore, it's verifying it. The 10x promise? It's real, but it's not a free lunch. It demands a new kind of developer, someone whose primary skill isn't just creating from a blank page, but critiquing and verifying what the AI creates. So I guess the final question is, are you ready to be a verifier?